Okay. Is that it? Hmm? Is that the cover? I mean, is that the thumbnail? One has to think of these things. For my inaugural video, I, of course, decided to talk about The Hobbit by J.R.R. Mother Clucking Tolkien. Yeah. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to assume here at the beginning that everyone on the face of the earth hasn't read this book. And I'll give you my recommendation, what I think. And it's going to be a 5-star recommendation system, with 5 being, completely godlike. Everyone, even degenerates who don't like to read, I think would like a 5-star book, right? Certainly all us readers love them. On the far end of that is a 1-star. A 1-star being a monstrosity so terrible that you should probably burn it. It's right and proper to burn a 1-star book if even the fire accepts it. 4-star is a great book that I recommend for all readers, right? If you like to read, even if it's not your genre, you'll like a 4-star book. A 3-star book is a good book, but in genre if you're a reader, right? So if you don't like a biography book, you don't like horror, you should probably stay away from such and such book. And a 2-star book is a bad book. It's not good. It has problems, it has deficiencies. But if you're fiending, right? Like, so you read all Lord of the Rings and you just want elves. I gotta have some elves. A 2-star book will fill you up a little, but it ain't good. So, obviously, oh wait, obviously The Hobbit. Yeah, I got a 4th copy because I'm insane. Oh, obviously The Hobbit's a 5-star book. I don't think you're gonna find many people who would argue against that. That it's an extremely good book, very enjoyable. And I recommend anyone who hasn't read it to stop this video and go read this book. It's that good. You can find it anywhere. It's everywhere. I got this bad boy at a Dollar General, at a Family Dollar, I think. It ain't trying to hide from you, people. Now for the rest of this video, well, okay, so maybe you've not read it and you're like, no, Maclise, the crap is this book about? Let me read the back. It does a good job. Bilbo Baggins was a hobbit who wanted to be left alone in quiet comfort, but the wizard Gandalf came along with a band of homeless dwarves. Soon Bilbo was drawn into their quest, facing evil orcs, savage wolves, giant spiders, and worse unknown dangers. Finally, it was Bilbo, alone and unaided, who had to confront the great dragon Smaug, the terror of an entire countryside. And when I was little, I had this one, right? This horrible cover. Did nothing for the book. Jersey's own Bilbo Baggins. But when I read Wizard and Dwarves, bro, I was sold. I didn't need nothing else. You shouldn't either. If you haven't read it, go enjoy, please. For me. For the rest of us, I will now, ramble on as to why I own 4 copies of this book. What does it do that's so good that I keep rereading it? Why do we keep coming back? At least this is why I do. Got my handy notes here. The Hobbit. The book establishes itself extremely quickly, right? And how he does this, how Tolkien does this, is he starts by a history of the dwarves, so to speak, like as a people, as a race. And so it feels like almost like, a textbook or something. You believe it. You want to believe it. But before you think too hard on it, he whittles it down to one hobbit. And so that history half explains this hobbit. And then that hobbit acts a certain way that he acts, which is Bilbo. And so you're fairly planted and you know what's going on. You know what's supposed to happen within a page or two, very quickly. Then he introduces Gandalf, the wizard. Now he doesn't come in as an antagonist or anything like that. We don't But he clearly, even early in, he's gonna, stir the pot here, which is what we want to happen. We want that action to start. And that's what he does. But also here, Tolkien establishes another element to this book. And that's a little bit of humor. He has a bit of a dry humor in this. I'm not telling a joke. It's not knock knock. There's no setup or punchlines like this. It's just these humorous situations, right? Bilbo says to the wizard, I had no idea you were still in business. In business, like a wizard is a lawyer, right? Like a wizard is a freaking, plumber. I'm tired of being a chef. I'm going to go be a wizard. Is that how that works? So silly. Absolutely cracks me up. On rereads especially. I didn't pick it up the first time, but I was a wee lad. The next thing he does, and the thing that may be the most technically impressive to me, apart from, the approachable language, is how he introduces the dwarves. And character introduction's not too difficult, right? But if you read books, any other kind of random grab a book that you like, you go through sort of the scenes, and these books don't have 10, 15 people in a space together interacting in a meaningful way. You could be in a stadium or a restaurant that has a lot of people, but they're not characters. They don't have agency. They're not moving the plot. Here he ends up with 14, 15 people in a room, and as a reader, you're able to follow along. You're aware of what's happening. You know who's talking to who, and you know that that's the thing that they would say, right? And it's how he introduces them. He picks them two at a time. So, it's not too much to bite off. We already know Bilbo. We're interested in these two because of how Bilbo reacts. But they come in and one will have a silver belt or a blue beard. Thorin comes in kind of haughty. He's a big deal. And before you know it, they're all sitting in there singing songs or whatever. But you follow along. It's very impressive. Very, very impressive. It's hard to get a large group to be yapping their yappers and for the reader to follow it. I mean, the medium is one word at a time, right? It's not a movie. You can't just see it. You only see in one word at a time. That's how we read. What do I got next? Oh my God. I'm looking at my notes. Oh, another part that I remember it catching my attention when I was younger, and it catches my attention for a different reason now that I'm older, right? And that's Bilbo's age. Bilbo is 55 years old in this book. Now, that's not ancient, but when you're 12 or 13, 55 is you up there, right? You old. So why was it that as a youngling, I was able to connect with this 55-year-old hobbit? How did Tolkien do that? What he did is he gave authority figures. He put in Gandalf and Old Thorin, and these count as sort of the people who know what's happening in the story. Even for Bilbo, right? He looks to them to know where are we supposed to go, how are we going to eat, what's going to happen, how do I get out of this? For the most part, it's a failsafe. So in that sense, they feel like parents, right? And then Bilbo feels like a kid, which if you're a kid, you can relate to another kid. And so you go along for this ride. Now, as an adult, you reread this and you understand that there's sort of more significance to this age. In a lot of books today, YA books, you know, we try and cram too much in, I think, to some of these characters. Where we'll have a 22, 23-year-old character. I got to talk to the president, or I got to tell the admiral how to win this war, or some mess like this. And while not wrong, right? Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What it always does for me is it just gives an odd flavor, right? Like maybe a little, not enough salt or something to a dish, because that doesn't happen a lot in real life. 22-year-olds aren't telling admirals what to do. They're not talking to the president. So here, when he has a 55-year-old, it colors those conversations appropriately. We are in a situation. We're captured by such and such. You got to bring something to the table. You got to, what do you think? Other adults ask other adults what they think before they move through a situation. And that's what this group does. They over and over ask Bilbo, who's an adult, who's 55, who has 55-year-olds have some sense. Most of them. They're no longer like car surfing, right? At 55. But he's not also decrepit in any way. But he can talk eye to eye with the other dwarves, even though some of them are way older than him. 500, I think one of them's 600 years old. But he can still talk to them and they'll respect what he says. I think something to do with this age. Another thing that is, again, it's another sign of that humor. It's the whole burglar situation, right? It's always funny to me when you sit and think about it. We're gonna go to Disneyland or something. Me and the boys. None of us say, bro, anyone know a thief to round out this group so we don't go, we need this group rounded out. I need a thief. Nobody says that. Who brings the thief with them? It's hilarious. Right? But in the book, we just play it off like, bro, if I say he's a burglar, he's a burglar. Right? I'm Gandalf. You better respect that. And Bilbo, for for his part, again, another sort of a natural trait. All this, he is aware that there's, what is it? He gets kind of salty that they don't think he could be a burglar, even though he's not a burglar. And then he sort of tries to give him what for. And then he takes all this sort of credit he doesn't deserve that Gandalf's trying to give him because he's not a burglar. He should just, if he was honest, he'd just say, I'm not a burglar. He's kind of wrong. But he doesn't. He starts strutting around all this, right? He takes it on himself, this little mantle. And as a mythology, that's sort of a lie, right? It's a white lie. But it is a lie. He's not now pure. And in a mythology, you have to balance that out. Otherwise, the lesson is you can lie and, get a pot of gold. We don't like that. So Tolkien balances this out by sort of all the negatives that Bilbo has to go through. Cold, rained on, hungry, chased by monsters, this sort of thing. You never feel too bad for him. One, with the 55, he's grown, and two, with the sort of the white lie, and it sort of evens out that little bit of negative that he brought on himself. Next is Rivendell. Great place to be. You ever get a chance to go, I suggest, you beeline it to there. They'll feed you good. I love this. I love this place. And it gives us a first introduction to Elrond, who he uses the other characters already established to sort of establish this sort of new character, right? He gives them a lot of the attributes that he's given the other people. Stern like a dwarf and wise like a wizard and forever young in his face, but with these wise eyes or whatever, however he says it. And so that when you compare a person to the wizard, who I already like by this point, you got some street cred, right? And before we think too hard about it, he starts dropping lore on us. And I love the crap out of some lore. He's talking Gondolin. He talking about these swords they got from the cave over there. And I eat that crap up. It fills up the world with all the history, with this backstory. He fills up his world extremely well. And it's really great. But another thing about this particular spot is the elves. Now, I'm going to get a little into the weeds here because this is something that I think about a lot for no random reason, right? And it's how the elves are shown in this book in particular. Compared to the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, right? The other books. What we have here, lore-wise, is Bilbo Baggins' story, right? This is a first-hand account. He was there. He hung out with these dwarves. He walked into Rivendell. So we have a first-hand account from a trustworthy source because hobbits don't lie. And if they do, Bilbo doesn't lie. He's not a liar. He has an opinion, though, right? So these elves are silly billies. They're singing, they're hanging in trees and singing goofy songs, so much so that, like, Gandalf admonishes them. He's like, bro, we don't know who could be listening. You got to be quiet, right? And that doesn't happen in the other books. In the other books, they're always these glossed out, very perfect beings, right? That bad stuff happens to because men are stupid and dwarves are greedy, right? Now, why is that? Why is there this difference? And the difference is the other books, while written by Bilbo as well, for the most part, his sources become those elves. They live through it. Any historian would talk to them to know what happened in the first and second age or whatever, because they actually lived through it. They're 2,000 years old. But memory is what it is, and people are what they are. So how can, they color the situations, slant it to make themselves look a little better, maybe, right? Maybe, if you think about it. I mean, that's how memory works. It's why you want more than one eyewitness. You slant things. It's just how it goes. And no one ever brings this up. I yap a lot in forums and whatnot about sort of this issue, and no one seems to want to talk about it. A lot of elf love out there. But I'll talk about it. Next, we get to maybe the highlight of the book. Maybe the best part. Well, maybe not the best part. But a really great part. It's just riddles in the dark. Gollum. Right? And as I sit here, I try and think of another character who's come off the page so brightly as this character. Maybe a Sherlock Holmes, right? You get a good sense, a vivid sense of who that character is very quickly. But it's kind of cheating, right? Because there's a lot more Sherlock Holmes stories. This Gollum gets such a small section of this book to come across so well. It's really amazing how he did it. So what is it? What is it that stands out so much? And it's not just that he's a monster, right? Because he's not a monster. Monsters are just teeth and claws. You just avoid the teeth. You'll probably be all right. What he is sort of intelligent, right? He they have him. He's on a little boat out in this lake, and he paddles with his hands, super quiet. Those are high level thoughts. It's intellect. You got to be smart to make a boat. You got to be somewhat self aware to want to sneak up on a prey, and he doesn't want to always be wet, right? Which is subtle, but it's a thing. If it starts to rain, Lizard just sits there. He got a lizard brain. He doesn't care. But people, they scurry up under something. They get an umbrella. I don't want to be wet. I didn't sign up. I'm not signing up to be wet right now. Let's not do wet, right? Let's stay dry. So, he has these elements to him. And also, there's a menace there, an actual threat. As much as they're in trouble before, right? They got captured by the goblins and they're in a spot. I never feel like they're going to get got. Gandalf's there. Thorin's there. Got to stay hydrated. The big kahuna burgers are there, right? They're going to figure something out. We're going to get out of this. But then Bilbo gets separated from the group. Alone now. In the dark. The bad spot. And here comes this threat. And you believe it. You believe when he says, if you lose, I'm going to eat you. That's pretty jacked up thing to say too. I mean, who eats people? Who wants to eat a hobbit? But he does, right? He's seriously thinking about this. And you seriously think he'll do it. And Bilbo thinks he'll do it. Right? So it's a lot going on there. And he just brings the menace, and even way after you're done reading the book, you remember that scene just so sharply in your mind. Next up is the Eagles. The Eagles. They're a small part in this book, but they're also part to me of like the lore. They're like a symbol of the outside forces at play in these stories, right? Where it's Sauron versus these gods, these Maiar, Valinor? I forget the word. In any case, one of these gods, is in the water, which may be why, Gollum didn't want to be in the water all the time. One, in charge of the air or whatever. But that's how the Eagles seem to me. They see, they're literally above it all, and they come in and have a small impact. They don't ever fly you all the way to Mount Doom or fly you right where you need to go, because they can't have too much. You have to work through it yourselves. Right? Which is what these gods learn. They sort of over-interfered with the elves. It caused problems. Then the elves sort of learn it. They over-interfered with men. It caused problems. So they try and have a hands-off approach. But they see that this evil is trying to interfere, and they can't just leave it unchecked. Right? Next we get to Beorn. A memorable character. Not my favorite. I wouldn't take it out, right? I'd leave it in. But even as a kid, I was like, just a bear? You just turn into a bear? I want to be like 9 different animals, right? Otherwise, just let me be a wizard or a dwarf. Dwarfs are real cool. Let me be a dwarf. I also didn't like his waiters being dogs. I don't want a dog slobber on my food plate. I'm not about it. Next up is Mirkwood. I happen to be living and have always lived in the piney woods of East Texas. That's what they call them. For obvious reasons, there's a lot of trees around here. They're boring. Trees are boring. I don't like walking in them. I hate cutting them down. They're heavy. They're just uninteresting to me, right? Maybe I'm desensitized. Maybe if I lived in the city or came from a desert, I'd like, oh, I can't get enough of these trees or whatever. I don't know. But I wasn't inclined to like this section because it's a section about woods, and they're boring. But what Tolkien does is he doesn't just leave them as woods, right? He extracts some out of them. So you can't drink the water, can't eat the black squirrels, there's nothing to eat. It's essentially a gloomy, dark desert. An oppressive, dark desert where you're slowly dying. And they have problems in here, right? It doesn't go well for them. They were better off in the mountains with giants chucking rocks around. They were better off fighting the goblins. They actually were. They took that a lot better than the issues that happened here. Plus, big freaking spiders. Right? That ain't ever good. Spiders are terrifying. Spiders are horrible. Jump at you and crap. Not good. And we got another example of elves acting differently than sort of elves usually do, right? Where these elves, they're partying out by themselves, but they're not trying to help nobody. The dwarves are trying to run over like, hey, can I get some help? They kick out that fire and they YOLO out, right? Which I think they sort of then, they're leading the dwarves deeper in to get them lost. So then they capture them, right? Which is sort of wrong too. You could just help them, but they don't. And then this leads to another one of the funniest parts in the whole book, which is, sort of uppity Thorin getting interrogated by this uppity elf king. It's the funniest crap. Where were your friends? Probably out in the woods starving. What were they doing? Looking for food because they're starving. Why are you harassing my people? I wasn't harassing them. I was asking for help because I'm starving. He just keeps plugging away at that crap. Oh, it cracks me up. Every time it cracks me up. I love that. Then we get to Lake Town, which, I like that it's on the water. It's a cool idea. But what's funny about this to me is how pompous Thorin and company get, right? They stroll into town. They got nothing but sort of rags because they were in prison. And someone's like, it's the king under the mountain returned. And he gets all that shine, right? He takes it all right in line. He big gulping it down. And it's like, bro, you haven't done anything yet. You don't got any gold. But you're strutting around. You're strutting around like you do got gold. It's very funny. Then we come to the Lonely Mountain itself, and like I was thinking is the first thing they think, which Bilbo sort of says it. He's like, this is sort of the problem. The flaw, the hole in your plan I saw from the beginning is none of us know what to do about this dragon. Which you would have think they'd have solved before they started. But there's some eager beavers, right? So they just got after it. But they're sitting there with they got no way to handle this dragon. And Gandalf, another part like the burglar, Gandalf says, that heroes are hard to come by. As if that's a thing you could just hire out. Like if he could have found, I'm like, I got a hero in mind. You can hire him, give him a good chunk of that gold. He'll handle the dragon for you, right? It's kind of funny. But then that also got me thinking, you know what? He doesn't say that heroes don't exist. He didn't say this isn't a thing we can get. He says they're hard to come by. Right? So who would he have got to be the hero if he needed to, right? If Bilbo's like, nope, I want no part of it, find another person for that lucky number you want, who would Gandalf have got? I'm thinking, go with me, Aragorn. Hmm? Oh, think about it. I think he'd have been alive. I think he might have been 30 something maybe. Right? Hire Aragorn to go with the dwarves and, stabby stabby the old dragon there. That's all it takes. You just got to stab them. They go down pretty easy, to be honest. On the whole, you just got to avoid, the dragon magic and the fire, the teeth. But I wonder, I'm like, it would have changed a lot, right? Thorin would have still been in charge, which might have gone bad because he's more susceptible to dragon magic. But I think on the whole, Gandalf and other people, other big wigs, didn't want to risk Aragorn. I mean, you don't want to kill the king for some goofy dwarves' gold, right? So maybe they didn't want to risk it. So I can see why it didn't work, and it makes sense why he didn't just get that hero. But it'd have been cool, right? It's a cool little thought, like a what if. What if Aragorn had killed Smaug or something? Very cool. There's another thing that I was thinking about. Oh no, hold on. Well, let's talk about Smaug a little bit. Great villain, but for sort of the same reasons Gollum's a great villain. He's not just a monster. He clearly has teeth. He'll clearly eat you. He ate their ponies. He's eating dwarves. He's trying to eat more dwarves, right? Eating people. It's kind of jacked. But when he starts to deal with Bilbo, he doesn't know what exactly he's dealing with because he can't see him, right? Obviously. Ye old ring of power. So what he does is he tries to affect him psychologically. He tries to sow discontent. They'll leave you for dead. They don't care. He's trying to put that dragon magic on you. Freeze you up, make you make a mistake. And that's sort of scary, right? An intellectual, powerful enemy is scary. And that's what he is. He got thoughts, sort of pompous, volatile personality, but it's a great character. But then it made me think, right? Because Bilbo has the ring. He has the ring of power. And when he goes in, Smaug has some kind of a dream. About someone stealing a vase, which is exactly what Bilbo does. And he instantly notices this vase is gone the moment he wakes up. So I'm like, why didn't he wake up sooner? He's a pretty sharp knife. He would have smelt them, even in his sleep. He's clearly not a heavy sleeper. And then add to this, when they're in the tunnel, Bilbo has this feeling like, I gotta get out of the open. Right? And none of the others have it. They're talking about the gold, but he really is hounding them about it. And at the last second they leave, Smaug hits, right? He started blasting the place. Right where they would have been. All of them would have been toast. And it got me thinking, is this the ring? Is this the One Ring doing this? Saving the ring bearer. Right? Because Gandalf says that there's not a dragon with fire hot enough to melt the ring. We got to take it to Mount Doom. Well, Smaug, pretty old, got a great horde there. He might have had fire hot enough to melt this ring. So obviously the ring don't want to get eaten by Smaug and get melted. Did the ring save Bilbo? I'm just saying. Interesting little thought there. Then, okay, Smaug blasts the mountain, runs off. And that's another part that I love. It's a unexpected story element. As a reader, you're going along expecting something to happen with this dragon. Something sort of starts, but it doesn't get finished. There's no conclusion. How are they going to get the dragon off the gold to have the mountain, to have the kingdom? It's unresolved. And it stays unresolved for this chapter, for this upcoming, for whatever chapter that was. They just wander around. Eventually they come out, put hands on hips and say, bro, ain't no dragon. We got it. We did it. We didn't have to deal with a dragon. We just had to show up. You gotta play the game, bro. I came, I saw, didn't have to conquer. Just it was given to me. Pretty sweet deal. And it happens in life sometimes that way, right? Where we build up a thing that ends up not being a thing, right? I'm late for work. I'm going to get raked over the coals by the boss. Turns out he has wife aggro. War's off screen. Just doesn't affect you. Just not a problem. And you just move on. And what it also does is it upends your expectation, right? You're assuming something's going to happen with this dragon, and when it doesn't, now you can't assume other assumptions, and you're discombobulated. So it keeps you off kilter, and the story continues. And the story continues with sort of a new character. Now he uses Smaug, an established character, to intro a new character, Bard, who then kills Smaug. Right? Smaug comes, jacks up the town, kills Bard. Bard kills him. Sort of a heroic deed. Maybe a hero no one knew about. But a hero nonetheless. You kill a dragon, save your town, you're a hero. And things move forward, which, again, I absolutely love. Because what we end up, a lot of times, is the aftermath is almost more, it lingers longer than the event, right? You have a big concert. Take the biggest test of your life, and pass or fail, it's done. It's now behind you, and you live with this aftermath. And that's what exactly happens in this book. Elves show up. The people of Lake Town show up, and they're like making demands because there's no dragon, right? Everybody wants that gold. It's all this politics. And to be honest, Thorin ain't acting right. I think he got a little of the dwarf magic on him. The dragon magic on him. And he let it get to his head a little bit. But Gandalf shows up. And you really feel good about this. You really feel great re-seeing this guy. I love it. If in real life, if you're stranded on the side of the road, you can't fix a radiator, and Gandalf shows up, you feel much better. He's going to have some way to get you out of your situation, right? And he kind of does here, but Thorin ain't letting it happen. He is the king, mind you. And sort of next what happens is the big tear moment, right? Thorin dying. Yeah, I tear up. I tear up when it happens. I tear up on rereads, even though I know it's going to happen. And as a mythology, you look it over and you see sort of why it needed to happen. It's the redemption arc for him. He got a little hot he got a little hot. He didn't treat people right. He was the king, and Bard came and made reasonable demands. The dude took care of the dragon for you. You owe him at least, on that alone, you owe him a good chunk of gold. But then you burnt like his town down as well because the dragon was just chilling until you went and poked the bear, so to speak. So you owe him for the town. The Elf King shows up. You kind of owe him. You walked in his land uninvited. You need permission to move through someone else's house. And you kind of left uninvited. Unallowed. You can't walk into someone's house and act like you want. You gotta act right, and he didn't act right at all. He was sassy to all of them. So how do you redeem that? How do you make this wrong a right? Well, he got a warrior's death. You die in battle, you can't be that bad. You're probably a good cat, at least in the end, right? And that's sort of the dwarves. In the end, they're okay, right? In the end, they won't let you down. In the end, they'll grab you, but if they can sort of make a move, they'll make a move. But that's a tear fest, and it is what it is. So then he's heading back home. It's sort of a pleasant trip, and what Tolkien, another element of Tolkien's writings is we have big event, right? And then he tapers it down. So you go from running to jogging to walking to you're kind of tired and you're looking to sit in that chair now, right? You just let's take a nap, right? We put the work in. Let's settle this down. And in the midst of this, we get to almost the last 2-3 pages, right? I mean, we're way back. Yeah, I got 2 pages left, and one's an ad. One's an ad. What happens? Illegal issues happen. Yes. They think he's dead, so they're selling his crap. Can you imagine? You just trounced around the world. You helped establish essentially 3 kingdoms because the Elf Kingdom's going to be better off with the evil out of the woods. Lake Town's going to be better off with all that gold streaming out, and a dwarven kingdom was established in the mountain with tons of gold. You helped establish 3 kingdoms. You dealt with a dragon. And then this bucket of cold water gets splashed in your face because none of these hobbits know anything about any of that. And they just want your spoons. Dude has to buy back some of his own spoons. Right? The crap is that? Dude has to buy back some of his own spoons. How hilarious is that mess? Legalese. It's like I want a Ferrari. I want to go drive my Ferrari. No, bro. You got to go wait in line at the DMV. Right? You need a license plate. You need proof of insurance. You need all these other not fun things that this person droning on that you need, and you're just in your head thinking, bro, I just want to be outside riding my Ferrari. Don't get to do it. There's nothing more real than bureaucracy, right? Absolutely hilarious. And then sort of the last page, the really actual last page. I got no other else. The last page is Gandalf comes back, and we reminisce. We actually just get updates on how everyone over at the Lonely Mountain's doing. It's a very pleasant, warm feeling. You got the cold water off of you now. You're sitting in the chair. You're drinking some tea. You feel real good. And then this reminiscing comes and just eases you on off, and that's it. End of story. Of course, the story goes on. But it's such a great way, and any good book has to stick the landing. You don't get the landing, and it ruins everything, right? Stephen King has a major problem with this. I'll get into that later in other videos. But he cannot stick a landing, like 9 times out of 10. Great book, bad landing. It's an issue. Well, there it is. There you have it. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've blabbed long enough. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Any kind of comments you want to put below, I'll read them. We'll talk about it. If it get too heated, I'll make a video about it. Now, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and upload at some kind of a regular schedule. Now, the problem with this is, and not my books, I got plenty of books. What I am is a slow reader, right? I don't read quickly. And for some reason, here recently, I've been liking these thick books, right? I want a thick book. I don't know why. So, they're taking even longer than normal. But I'm going to buckle down and try and get after it. Now, some of the first few will be books I've read already. So hopefully I can get a head start on the schedule. But we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching.